welcome back to the channel. Today I'm ranking each era of Pokémon. To begin this initial ranking, there must first be some ground rules set out for what justifies an era of Pokémon. In this video I will analyse and judge each game based on the Game Boy era, Gen 1 to 3, the DS era, Gen 4 to 5, the 3DS era of Gen 6 to 7, and the Switch era of Gen 8 to 9. I will judge each era based on gameplay, polish, and general vibe, which I know is highly subjective, but I think is highly important for these games. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into the rankings of each Pokémon era. The 3DS era brought some revolutionary changes, especially the introduction of 3D graphics. The games truly took the idea of gimmicks to the next level, introducing Mega Evolution in X and Y and Z moves in Sun and Moon. But the games focused so heavily on innovations such as riding Pokémon and these gimmicks that the games lacked polish. For each great new feature, the games had unfinished gym leaders who were too easy or didn't incorporate the gimmicks into their teams, or hollow endgames in comparison to games such as Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And it is these issues that plagues Game Freak's revolutionary games, as unfinished and possessing a 3D world that felt like it was there for aesthetic and didn't play into the features of the game. However, merit must be handed out, and these games took scale and presentation to the next level. The introduction of the Ultra Beast locations and Kalos' grand cities was something the fans could never expect. The Mega Evolution designs were incredible and brought new life to Pokémon that were soon dead. However, these games lack solidarity in their final release. They're unpolished and unfinished, and it places these games as the worst era of Pokémon. The Game Boy era is simplicity at its perfect point. These games have one clear goal: to give the player a fun adventure and engaging gameplay. There isn't any desire to push boundaries and bring in super innovative ideas. Each game builds upon what was previously there, such as Silver and Gold introducing the Steel and Dark types, or Ruby and Sapphire introducing double battles. There isn't an insane amount of deference in these games. They are renowned for their polish and near perfect gameplay experience. Fire Red and Leaf Green are the quintessential Pokémon experience. The games have decent graphics, popping colours, and ultimately, that same engaging battle against Team Rocket that was simple but presented well. A similar story can be seen with G and S as well as S and R, and that's why these games are so beloved. However, I can't place them any higher than third. The games are perfect in their simplicity, but the basic nature of the games means there isn't any standout achievement by them. This era lacks something innovative. Other than the new Pokémon and slightly different battle mechanics, these games lack the quality of life improvements as well. We see these improvements in the future games, such as the physical special split and unlimited use TMs, and that's why they have to be placed in what could be seen as a somewhat undeserving spot.
Yes! Hell yeah!
Now's time for some controversy. I think the Switch era is an incredible push by Game Freak to create some revolutionary and perfect games. This era's games have had similar issues to the 3DS era, but there is ultimately a wider reaching goal to modernise these games. Consistent features such as ranked play, DLCs, and a greater focus on online features has led to the games becoming more popular than ever. The mainline games Game Freak released in this era have the potential to be the peak of the franchise. Seeing bosses such as the Professor in Gen 9 brings about a genuine belief in me that these stories of this era can rival what we saw in the DS era. Similarly, these games have brought about so much innovation. Whilst BDSP was an attempt at a faithful remake, I justify those games as a blip in what has been an incredible era. The introduction of raids in Sword and Shield brought about replayability like never before, and possibility for trainers to catch some incredible Pokémon whilst facing a fun challenge. Also, competitive battling has reached its peak. Battling is more accessible than ever with more and more tournaments as well as ranked online play. The capability to enter a whole other side of Pokémon is easier than ever. What must also be commented on is Legends Arceus, a fully fledged spin-off game that took the basic mechanics of the game and created something so interesting and special with a great story to boot. The innovations and potential of these games makes me ignore the lack of polish in terms of bugs and glitches, and forces me to place the Switch era in second place. Now, welcome to the unbeatable, the perfect, the best era of Pokémon, the DS era. This era comes with unmatched vibes till this day. Diamond and Pearl, banger. Heart Gold, Soul Silver, banger. Black and White, a new creature of the game's stagnating that created arguably the series' peak in terms of storiness and freshness, banger, and finally Black and 2, a mix of that freshness with the familiarity of the previous games, banger. Game Freak took everything they learned from the simplicity of the Game Boy era and innovated perfectly. Diamond and Pearl created so many quality of life improvements you wouldn't believe they were 2 years apart from the Fire Red and Leaf Green games. Platinum improved upon that. Then we had Pokémon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, arguably the best games in terms of polish and replayability. These games were the remakes at their peak. Fighting against Team Rocket never felt so good, and the presentation of Ho-Oh and Lugia was brilliant, as well as the battle against Red on Mount Silver, which was perfect in the new era. These games took the foundations of Pokémon and created polished masterpieces. However, the era wasn't just implicit in stagnating the franchise. Game Freak took new changes and brought about Pokémon Black and White. The freshest game of all, Black and White was unrecognisable at the time. 150 new Pokémon, and those were the only usable ones throughout the story. There wasn't teams filled with Gyarados, Magneton and Lucario, staples that were used in all of the previous games. Instead, Game Freak sought to make their new Pokémon mainstays and have a proper effect on the franchise, which is why Pokémon such as Hydreigon, Amoonguss and Crocodile remain fan favourites to this day, with many more also. These games were a perfect refresh, but we also got fan service in the second release of Unova. For those who wanted to use older Pokémon in the region, and that's what makes this region so great. There is 2 entirely different ways to play the region, and 2 entirely different sets of Pokémon for you to enjoy. Ultimately, these games are great. They are the perfected Pokémon formula before the 3D era had to be introduced, and that's why these games remain on top till this day.
Champion of the world!
That's my ranking. Let me know what you think in the comments, and like and subscribe.
Pikachu, Pikachu.